Hey everyone, welcome to Hit the Apex podcast. I'm Jawad as always, and thank you for joining me as always. How's everybody doing? Good, I hope. I hope everyone's doing good. Another bumper edition, wall-to-wall racing, as I said last time, because it pretty much is, we had all this time without any racing, and now it's kind of just clogging up the weekends, social life becomes non-existent. Not that, it is existent here at the moment, given the situation which is changing and getting worse day by day, but we persist indeed. But yeah, wall-to-wall racing. Grand Prix on the weekend, that's just gone past. In Austria again, the Grand Prix of Steiermark. Gonna review that one for you guys, then bit of a preview for the Hungarian Grand Prix this weekend. Typically, Hungary is more towards the end of July, not the middle of July, so a bit of an adjustment there, but heading to a new track at least for this season, because two races at the same track, by the end of it, you kind of get your mind warped by going around the same place however many times. So what's 71 times 2? I'm not very good at maths. 142, I think. Yep, I didn't have to use a calculator for that. Good. So 142 laps in total we've had as far as racing is concerned at the Red Bull Ring. Another useless stat that you guys can use, I'm sure. Hungary this weekend, and also Supercars Championship as well. A lot to talk about that. More so about off-track stuff and what the situation here in Australia, the eastern states, will have, what kind of impact is that going to have on the championship moving on, and, other things, IndyCar, MotoGP this weekend as well, a little bit on that at the end of the show, and IndyCar over the weekend, which was exciting to see too. So, Grand Prix of Steiermark getting right to the top, hitting our marks. Bad joke. And I said it, heading into the weekend, and I'm sure a lot of people did too, that expect Lewis Hamilton to bounce back after the weekend that he had at the Austrian Grand Prix the week before, and indeed it was purely a masterclass, nothing more, nothing less. Dominant pole that he got in the wet, which, wet qualifying, got to clap our hands and doff our hats to the stewards, to the FIA for allowing them to go out and qualifying. There was a point there where I felt that maybe we wouldn't see any running at all on Saturday, given how catastrophic the weather was. The F3 race got red flagged. They were able to do the F2 at the end of the day after F1 qualifying, but yeah, we got a really good qualifying session. And Lewis Hamilton, over a second or second and a half, I think, was on pole. Mixed results, Carlos Sainz star for McLaren, P3. Then you had the issues with the Ferraris, and, I'll talk a bit about Ferrari in their race, obviously, with their first lap DNF there at turn 3. It was a, shocker of a weekend for those guys. It was like watching two clumsy mules kind of just dawdling around the track, with no sense of direction or purpose. Crisis point, do you start attaching that label to their situation? Is it getting to a stage where it is going to boil over? There's going to be frustration, there's going to be fingers pointed, names named, all that sort of stuff. So a bit about them a bit later, but the race itself, Lewis Hamilton, dominant win, not really bothered during the race either. Mercedes as a whole just seemed more comfortable than they did the week before at the Red Bull Ring. Of course, a weekend's worth of data that they can go off, they learn. There was no change in tyre compounds as well for this weekend, which would have helped as well. But the drivers too, they learn. They know that they can't really attack the curbs as hard as they were initially at the start of the season, but now they were like, okay, let's keep it in the confines of the racetrack and not be as aggressive, but still they were fast. They were fast in the race. pull out to a good lead. Valtteri Bottas, though, he started from 4th, so there was a bit of work that he needed to do to get himself onto the podium, and ultimately to take 2nd as well for a Mercedes 1-2. Hang on. Right. I was like, New Deal, what's that? Apparently Valtteri Bottas will have a new deal for next year. So, I mean, based off, the first 2 races alone, he leads the championship. He's won a race. You're not going to sack him or, say your services are not required for next year. I think we're seeing a much stronger Valtteri this year already, albeit we've been at a track which he's been stronger than Lewis in the past, but I'm sure as the season goes on, we'll see him stay in the current mould that he is. But yeah, bit of a race on his hands, obviously with Max Verstappen. Lap 67, Max kind of compromised by his tyres, faded a little bit, and then his front wing, there was some damage too, which meant that he was there for the picking, and Bottas gets by. Takes P2. Very good. Very good. I'm sure there's going to be people out there who's like, oh, we're back to the F1 snooze fest and everything. Oh, if I can get up, or not get up, if I can stay up till past 1 o'clock in the morning to watch the checkered flag being worn, I'm sure, any other die-hard fan can do the same thing as well. I mean, if you're not interested, then just tune out. Simple as that. You don't need to keep being critical, given the fact that, the category, and I've said this a lot, maybe not on the podcast, but, when talking to people here and there, I said, the sport is still trying to correct itself on mistakes that it made under previous management, and sometimes that does take a long time to do so, and, undoing the damage of the previous commercial rights holders, they basically let it sink to where it is, and now, we, an uncompetitive Formula One, it's true to a certain degree when you look at the front of the championship, but then when you look at the midfield, what we've got there, and again, over the weekend, it was such a great battle amongst those guys for positions 5, even position 4 you could count, even though Alex Albon ended up getting it, P4, P5, all the way down to P10. It's really tightly contested, and you've got, teams like Racing Point who've been so strong. Obviously, their pink Mercedes concept has been under scrutiny. It came under scrutiny again over the weekend. Renault putting in a protest post-race. It's been deemed admissible by the FIA and the stewards, so it means that, it can be put forward before like a jury or a hearing or something. And Racing Point's response was that, the protest has been misconceived and poorly informed, or Renault's perceptions and beliefs in regards to the legality of the Racing Point car. And yeah, a lot of people are debating it at the moment, given that some people are of the belief that, well, it kind of goes against what an F1 constructor is all about. As a constructor, you construct your own car. You can throw Haas into that argument as well, in that they don't actually build their own car. They get it, they have the chassis built by Dallara. But for Racing Point to go out and copy essentially the 2019 Mercedes and use that this year, that's what's, irked a lot of people. But they claim, they did build everything. Obviously they get Mercedes gearboxes and power units and everything else they build. So, just a lot of photos that they use to build the car off. And I think maybe the front end of the car is a bit different, or I'm not too sure about that, but it's certainly going to be a narrative to follow throughout the season. Renault, obviously, with their own problems too. It was unfortunate seeing Esteban Ocon out of the race again, with reliability problems that we saw Daniel Ricciardo have last week. Ocon was quick. He was inside the top 10. There was a bit of a fight there with his teammate Ricciardo. Ricciardo quicker on a different tyre, wanting to get past. Ocon not yielding until team orders got involved. But yeah, then there was the mechanical DNF, which saw him not finish the race anyway. So there's only won a lot of points for Renault, which, given the context of things, I think they'll have to take. But McLaren, I said, and I'm going to stick by it for the whole season, I hope, is that they're going to be really consistent during the races. They dropped behind Racing Point on pace, obviously, during the race. And we knew from practice that they didn't have the same pace as the Racing Point car. But again, Lando Norris, last lap Lando, scenario 7, whatever they call it, gets himself into 5th, after dropping down. Oh, sorry, he didn't even start that high up. He was... he had a penalty, actually. He had a grid penalty coming into the race for overtaking under yellow flags. Same thing that happened to Lewis Hamilton last week, except they actually gave the penalty right after practice instead of hanging around until, 10 minutes before the race start. So Lando takes P5. Stunning last lap. He had to overtake a couple of cars. It was Lance Stroll there, Sergio Perez, of course, who ended up getting damage as a result of his pass attempt on Alex Albon. So Checo looked so strong during the race, potential P4 on the cards, but it just went awry for him. Albon survives, but Perez was the one who ended up getting the front wing damage and was still able to hang on to his position after that, which was a bit of a surprise. So, he ended up in 6th. You had Lance Stroll, Daniel Ricciardo fighting for 7th and 8th. Ricciardo initially ahead, but there was a bit of a botched move by Stroll to take P7, which of course was going to leave Renault a bit more filthier than they already were, given that they A, don't like what Racing Point are doing with their car, and B, their driver's just gone and done a dodgy move to finish a position ahead, given that points are pretty crucial. But again, good result for McLaren. Carlos Sainz down in 9th despite qualifying 3rd. That was, you could expect it with the pace of the cars that qualified behind him being quicker anyway. And he got the caveat of fastest lap at least, so at least an extra point to go his way. But I just forgot to Checo Perez, his qualifying. He qualified down in 17th and ended up finishing in the top 6. So stellar drive from him. Driver of the day kind of drive, of course, as well. And apparently in a bit of strife. I wouldn't call it strife, but, speculation about his future. Story going around this week about Sebastian Vettel, who Red Bull ruled him out. Other teams have ruled him out for next year. But now Aston Martin, who will be formed from Racing Point for next year, have said that they've had some kind of talks, or this motorsport.com reported that there's been talks between Vettel and Racing Point for next year. And the odd one out in this situation would be Perez. There's been some kind of clause that he can activate in his contract because he's still got a multi-year contract with the team, and I've said all along, and when Perez got that new deal, that this would be his last deal. It would see him through to the end of his F1 career, especially with a team that he's been very loyal to, coming there in 2014 after the failure that he had at McLaren at the start of their downturn too. So this would be disappointing if they have to make way for Vettel via Perez, because you're not going to get rid of the team owner's son who drives the other car, Lance Stroll, in this instance. The idea was kind of briefly entertained over the weekend, but it seems like everyone is jumping on the conclusion that that's not going to happen. But it's a bit disappointing that, because you want it to be about performance and accountability. Stroll have said he's got to be a bit more consistent this year. He's got a good car under his belt. We saw a mega drive from Checo, 17th to 6th there. Stroll, he did out-qualify Perez, but, wet conditions. Stroll's been pretty good in wet conditions here and there. Just look at Monza a few years ago when he was in the Williams, and finished 7th in the race, and it took a bit of a dodgy move on Ricciardo to be able to get that position. So I'm going to have to see a bit more from Stroll, but it looks like his position within the team's already shored up anyway. So, but yeah, to bring in someone like Vettel obviously would be a big deal. It put him in the Mercedes-Benz driver camp as well, given that Racing Point or Aston Martin next year will be racing with those Mercedes power units. At the same time, Seb, 4-time world champion and all that, he just, at the moment, doesn't seem like he's all there. Like, the move on the weekend that saw both Ferraris DNF'd in the first lap wasn't Seb's fault. I know that people quickly jump on the bandwagon and be like, oh, it's Seb's fault again. No, not in this instance. And we did see Charles Leclerc quite humble after the race in his admission that it was his fault. He made the wrong move. Tried to go up the inside at turn 3 when there was 3 cars abreast going through there. It wasn't going to happen, so took pretty much Vettel's rear wing off, and both of them out of the race as a result of it. So, Seb, you kind of want him to be on the grid next year. The options are thin, but at the same time, if it comes at the expense of Checo, which I think will, given how much Checo's done for that team, the finances he brings as well, has surely helped them over the years as well. The podiums, the results that he's brought, it's a bit of a hard one, bit of a bitter pill to swallow in that instance. But again, 4-time world champion Seb, if there's a competitive enough seat out there, I'm sure people will want to have him on the grid, especially when you've got Fernando Alonso returning as well, and Kimi Raikkonen maybe do another year there with Alfa Romeo, given that the rules are still the same. Does he want to see the 2022 regs? And Lewis Hamilton, of course, as well, you'd imagine would stay for another season, unless, of course, he drops out at the end of this year. And that quickly got into a discussion about 2021 driver market. I thought we were talking about the race here. I mean, it wasn't the greatest race. It was good, but not as good as the first Austria race either. But yeah, good results there for Checo. Seemed like talking up Checo a lot. Not that he needs it, but yeah, hopefully he stays put. But there's another rumour says he might be on Red Bull's radar. There you go. But then Albon, what's Albon done wrong? Even though he wasn't really on the pace of the top 3, finished quite a way behind, actually. Well, not as far behind as he was before Max made a second pit stop to put on some soft tyres, have a crack at fastest lap, which didn't pay off. So, yeah, there'll be a bit of work to be done on his side of the garage. And Danny Kvyat finishing 10th as well, so more points, or a point for AlphaTauri. Crucially ahead of the Ferrari-powered cars, Alfa Romeo and Haas outside the points. I guess the only positive that Haas can take away from this race is that they at least finished with both cars, but the pace still a way off. And, they seem like, from what we've heard is that the tyre issues that they had last year definitely sorted. Now, different issues, and perhaps, the Ferrari power unit not being up to standard at the moment might be another problem with that. But, what is up to standard? Apparently last year their standard was doing some shifty stuff, burning oil when the sensor wasn't picking it up. So, there you go. One of the highlights, though, and I don't want to not talk about this, is George Russell in qualifying. First time he got out of Q1, ended up qualifying P11 due to a penalty for Charles Leclerc for doing what Lando Norris did. Leclerc was impeding. He impeded Kvyat during qualifying, so that was the 3-place grid penalty that he got. But yeah, P11 for Russell, great start, but then he plummeted in the race, wasn't good, ended up having a bit of a tangle with Kevin Magnussen, put him in the kiddie litter, and then as a result was consigned to the rear of the field with his teammate Nicholas Latifi, who I've got to say, and I haven't forgotten, last week on the show I said that he was last year's F2 champion. There was a bit of wishful thinking there from me, so and a few people pointed out that no, it was actually De Vries who did that, so that was my bad. I wasn't trying to talk up Latifi to the point where, I'm starting to make up stuff, but yeah, it was just an honest mistake. I thought Latifi did do it. He won the final race, though, of the season in Abu Dhabi, and that's, I think, what made me think in my mind that he was the champion. But no, that is not the case. Nick de Vries won by quite a big margin. So, and I do like de Vries quite a lot, even since he was at McLaren. It felt like he was there for ages and ages, and it didn't look like he aged at all. So he's doing well this year in Formula E. Hope he does a bit better in the last few races that we're going to have. But yeah, that clears that up. Russell dropped to the back of the grid. And that's that. I think that's the wrap for the race there in Austria. Move on to Hungary now, and different track altogether. More like an old school go-kart track, which is good. It's very technical. It's going to suit, someone like Red Bull, which it did last year. They ended up on pole with Max, but Mercedes have had a happy hunting ground here. Lewis Hamilton holds the record of wins, 7 wins in total, going for 8 as well, which would make it one of his most successful tracks. And given Mercedes' all-round performance in Austria, I don't see it being very easy to get past them. I think it might be just a Hamilton-Bottas battle. Bottas probably not as good as you would think around here. It's more of a Hamilton track, so could this be the race that we see Hamilton take back lead of the championship? He's 6 points behind coming out of the Austrian doubleheader. And for Red Bull, they've not had a win here since 2014. That awesome win by Daniel Ricciardo in the changeable conditions last time as well that we saw Fernando Alonso on an F1 podium. There's a good stat for you if you want to go back and watch that race. It was very entertaining. And in the race last year, Max had the pole. He was in the lead, going about his business. Mercedes got one up on them strategy-wise, so there was extra pit stop I think they took, and Max left out there after one stop and ended up having his tyres fade towards the end of the race, so that was their undoing. But, whole new year, we'll see what happens this time. It would be good to see Red Bull get a win, especially seeing as they're still trying to claw back ground in the Constructors and Drivers' Championship. Max ended up with that podium jumping up to 6th, I believe, still behind the likes of Checo and Lando Norris too. With that result, he's still 3rd that he got in Austria or Steiermark. So it's looking good for those guys. And as far as the midfield is concerned, Renault reliability, it's going to go hand in hand, I think, throughout the whole year, unless they can get on top of it. They need to get both cars in the points. I know it's only been 2 races, but given that it's going to be a shortened season, we don't even know if we're going to get 15 events in as well. We've got news that we're going to go to Mugello and Sochi. They've been added to the calendar after the race at Monza, so they'll happen in September. I don't have the dates with me right now, but you already know them anyway, or you've written them down in your diaries, your notebooks, whiteboards if you've got them, mobile phone. That would be practical, I think. And those funky watches that people wear that do more than just tell the time. A smartwatch, that's it. Gotta love my sarcasm. So yeah, Mugello, Sochi. Mugello, which I'm really excited about. All the years spent watching it on MotoGP, I've just got this image of the cars on the start and then in the first few laps, just charging down towards San Donato, which is turn 1, and it's almost a blind turn because you're coming over this hill, and imagine 3-4 cars going abreast into that corner, especially at the front. It's going to be spectacular. So Mugello's a good one to get behind. Sochi, yeah, you don't need to hear my views on Sochi because it probably mirrors all of your views as well. So unless you're one of those people who I love Sochi, then again, I'm one of those people who Albert Park, maybe, I don't know. I know there's a bit of hate for Albert Park out there because it's kind of brought us some boring races over the years, but hey, it's my local track. Or local F1 track, that is. Yeah, actually, Albert Park's closer to me than Sandown. So, yeah, it is my closest technical racetrack, but it's not a permanent racetrack. I can't go there and light up the tyres, put in the fast laps, the cyclists and ducks around. Yeah, I couldn't do that. So those races have been added to the calendar. You kind of, just by reading the news and figuring things out for yourself, seeing what's going on in the world, will probably understand that China's unlikely to happen this year, given that they've put a blanket ban on any kind of international events, sporting events, anything happening in the country this year. So you're going to have to rule that one out. And then given that that's not going to happen, Singapore's out of the question as well. Japan, I think, has been has been cancelled as well. You're not going to come, as much as F1 would love to, you're not going to come all the way to this side of the world just to go to Vietnam. You're going to probably want to stay close to where you've got a clump of races. And America as well now looks very unlikely, given their situation hasn't really improved. So, there was the possibility of going to Canada, then, Circuit of the Americas, and then your South, your Central American and South American events in Mexico and Brazil. So maybe a few more races in Europe, and then try and finish the season off with a doubleheader in Bahrain, maybe a doubleheader in Abu Dhabi. Who knows? But good to have Mugello on there. Ferrari. Whoa. It's not a curious case of, it's a case of what is going on, like you can say point fingers, this and that, but they just need to get results. They just need to turn things around. They've got two great drivers. Whether last year was a fluke, their results as far as having that trick engine is concerned, that's going to possibly bite them in the backside a bit further. But if I were Carlos Sainz, I would be like, I kind of don't want to drive for you guys anymore. I want to stay at McLaren. Yes, Carlos, we want you back. It's hard to sum up. Like, I'm not the biggest Ferrari fan, and I couldn't give a toss if they're doing this badly. But given that it's Ferrari and it's, the biggest F1 team or whatever throughout history, you got to be like, well, if they're spending all this money, and they've got this presence about them, then they're going to need to get some results. We've been waiting since 2007 for a title. Alonso came close, and that was because of his own Herculean efforts that we saw him get close. 2010, I guess, Petrov, that was just unlucky. But 2012, if Ferrari had a better car from the outset, then we would have seen, the 3 points that he lost the title to Vettel by in Brazil would have been a different story altogether. So, there's one title there. And then even Seb, when he, 2017, 2018, first half of the season, yeah, it looked like it was going to happen. Second half of the season, nah, sorry. And that was, due to driver error and also team error, not just the car being slow, but everywhere. Strategy was all over the place. Pit stops slow, just no, what do you call it? Not a well-oiled machine like Mercedes is, for example, and I could wax lyrical about them all day and all night, because they are the best team. They've been the best in every single department. And then when you look at other teams who are kind of getting to that level, Red Bull have been always there, but they've been kind of held back by, car and reliability, power unit and all that sort of stuff. McLaren have been very efficient as well, and now we're starting to see them rebuild into not exactly, title-winning force just yet, but they are, taking those steps, and I'm still riding high. They're second in the Constructors' Championship, and Lando's third in the Drivers' Championship, so we're going to milk that for as long as we can. And then Racing Point as well, when they transform into Aston Martin next year, that Silverstone team has always been a well-oiled little group there, always operating on a shoestring budget, but making the most of it, being the most cost-effective and everything. And even though they've got, last year's Mercedes that they're going to use for the next 2 seasons, at least it'll give them the opportunity to be planning for 2022, when the major rule change comes. They're not going to be able to copy Mercedes then. So, teams like them in such good positions for when these changes come. But the teams that are not adapting, and, there's been criticism towards Matteo Binotto, it's easy to point fingers at the person in charge, but, not knowing the full story. Like, I was always a bit curious as to why they had to sack Maurizio Arrivabene. I thought he was always, he was a people person, this, that, and, very diplomatic and everything, but, probably stuff behind the scenes. Bonotto seems more like, an engineer kind of, he's behind the scenes kind of person. But, he's got a good relationship, it seems, with Leclerc, as we found out, because apparently he didn't even offer Vettel a new contract for 2021. So, I think you don't want to say give him time, because they've had time. They've had plenty of time to be able to get into a championship-winning force again. But something's got to give. They've got to be able to produce something sooner or later. Otherwise, there's going to be questions, there's going to be scrutiny, there's going to be pressure. And, Sergio Marchionne, he was not afraid to mince his words and say, look, if, they're not going to be good at what they're doing, then I don't have to keep funding an F1 program. Ferrari can do other stuff. So there you go. And unfortunately, Sergio not around anymore. Rest in peace. But he did love his racing, which was good. So what say of the Grand Prix? Yeah, look, Mercedes, I think it's hard to go past them. But I would love a surprise. I would like a surprise, like we did in Supercars a couple of weeks ago, or it's been actually a month now. Time is flying at the moment, which is both a good and a bad thing, but, you can figure that out for yourselves. Good surprise in the Supercars, Sydney SuperSprint last time. We've got the Sydney SuperSprint number 2 this weekend. Same format, 3 32-lap races. There's the two-part qualifying on Saturday with the top 15 shootout, and then you've got the 2 qualifying sessions for the 2 races on Sunday. Only difference is the Saturday race will be starting at 6:25 p.m. Be done under lights. First night race in Sydney since 2018, and that obviously brings its own challenge with, conditions being much cooler in the night. Driving under lights as well puts focus more on driver instinct too. You talk about, or you hear them talk about how, they're trying to follow the other car, but it's hard visibility-wise. It's hard visibility-wise to see track limits as well. So whole new ball game as far as that concerned. And it's just really entertaining. I love it when they rock up with the neon lights under the cars, get that old Fast and Furious vibe, from the early 2000s, those original movies when they were at their peak before they started getting a bit too over the top. Yeah, it's not for me anymore. I think I liked the first 2 and that was about it. Tokyo Drift was okay, and after that I kind of lost interest. So that, brings its own challenge, which will be exciting. And then you look at the tyres as well, which were the talking point after the last time we went racing. We've got the same rules this time, 5 sets, which are 20 tyres per driver. Though they've divided it up, it's not going to be just 5 sets of soft tyres. They've got 2 sets of softs and 3 sets of hards for the weekend. So again, how teams use that and how drivers choose to use that will be key. Are they going to sacrifice a race worth of results to be able to get a stronger result in another race? So like we saw Nick Percat do in the second race in the last Sydney SuperSprint, ended up sacrificing tyres from a previous race to be able to get a good result in the second race, which ended up being the win. And even Lee Holdsworth, who went for a stunning drive to the podium on Sunday as well in the third race. So be interesting to see how they all manage this across the weekend, whether there's going to be more chaos and carnage too. But a lot of the, I guess, talking points around coming into this weekend is the heightened concern about the latest COVID outbreaks, and that doesn't, just include Victoria, where I am, and where, I said last time, the Supercars teams based here had to pretty much run for the border, with very little notice before they shut the borders between New South Wales and Victoria. But even over there in Sydney now, and quite close to the circuit too, two of the 2 suburbs that they've locked down apparently do are adjacent to where Sydney Motorsport Park is based, so there's a bit of concern about that. There's been increased testing anyway, so teams and personnel, drivers, they're all getting tested. And I knew that they would have to do this, as well as, originally they had planned for fans to be at this track for this weekend. 10,000 they were going to try and get, but today they announced that that's not going to happen. They've pulled all the ticket sales and said, no, we're not going to take any chances with that, which, hats off. That's the best thing you can do at the moment, because it's certainly not getting any better. Like, particularly here in Victoria, it's just skyrocketing. You got at least, well, now it's become like 200 cases a day coming out overnight, so it's and after this weekend, when they do finish up in Sydney, they're going to relocate all the teams to Queensland, try and get a hub up in Queensland, and a lot of sports are doing this as well. AFL now having to relocate completely to Queensland, and NRL maybe might have to do that as well. So it's just, the second wave is hitting us really hard, and whispers about going into stage 4 lockdown, which fortunately for us we haven't had to do at this stage, but other countries around the world, New Zealand, talking to Dino when they were in that lockdown about what it was like and everything. People I know in the UK as well, keep me informed about what was going on there at the time too. And I'm like, wow, I'm quite fortunate here that we're able to still have certain levels of freedom and everything, but, not to abuse that freedom, which a lot of people have done. And that's what's got us into this mess again. Yeah. But anyway, exciting to watch some racing. I think that it's been a good distraction anyway the last couple of weeks, and especially on the weekends when you normally want to socialise and hang out with mates and everything. Come on over, let's smoke up some ribs or something, do a barbecue, whatever. There's mates I haven't seen for going back to March, I think, since before the Grand Prix, the cancelled Australian Grand Prix. So there you go. But racing is what keeps us going and keeps us all connected and stuff like that. So really happy for that. Interesting. Got a record here that Scotty McLaughlin is in line to breaking this weekend if he pulls off, three-peat, if he goes and sweeps the event. He's on 46 wins at the moment, which is 6th in the all-time list. Peter Brock, 48 wins in total. He's 5th in the all-time list. So if Scotty gets 2 wins this weekend, he equals Brocky's record, and an extra win, 3rd win, if he does it this weekend, it'll take him beyond Brocky, put him 5th all time. So good on him. Scotty's done a good job. He's to think he was going to be doing IndyCar this year as well, doing a couple of races, that's going to be on hold. So more records for him to break in Supercars, and I've got my hopefully tip on him to win a 3rd title this year, but it's going to be tough when you look at the form that we saw from Jamie Whincup in the first in Adelaide, and also the Sydney Motorsport Park weekend gone last month, and of course Shane Van Gisbergen, you can't rule him out either. So it'll be a good weekend again, and I can't wait for the night race. All right, well, winding things down now, just quickly brief over some IndyCar stuff, MotoGP as well, which will be exciting to watch. It's going to be, this is the one benefit of F1 now being an hour later, even though it is a pain in the backside. Staying up till 1:30 sometimes in the morning, is that MotoGP, when they have a clash, and they're in Europe as well, they start at the traditional 10 p.m. time or 2 p.m. European time, whatever it is. So it'd be good to see them at the Spanish Grand Prix this year, Jerez. But what I wanted to talk about was more so rider movement, because there's been a bit more for 2021. HRC, Honda Racing Corporation, the factory Honda team, they've confirmed their lineup for next year. Marc Marquez will not be alongside his brother Alex. It'll be Pol Espargaro. So I don't know if it was a worst kept secret this year, or you put two and two together when KTM announced their lineup for next year and Pol Espargaro's name was not on there. And it was heavily rumoured back then that he would be a shot contender to replace Alex Marquez at Repsol Honda. So that's going to happen. And it's a good signing for them because Pol is a rider who, we've seen his, sparks of his talent since he came in. He's, when he was with Tech 3 Yamaha, then went over to KTM factory team as well. And he's kind of been in the midfield or to the rear of the field with KTM still developing. Now is his chance to, show what we've all been expecting and waiting to see from him. We're on a front-running bike and against his old rival from Moto 3 as well and Moto 2. So, there was fierce rivalry between these guys back in the day. So, reigniting a bit of that. Alex Marquez, I'm not going to say, look, it's unfair that he's been pushed aside, given that it's only been the season hasn't even started, and they've already made the call. I think this year what it'll be a good learning year for him on that factory Honda bike. He will still be on a factory bike next year, but he'll be at LCR, so the satellite team in place of Cal Crutchlow. So a bit of a learning year for him. It'll be good, that he'll get dropped in the deep end with, the factory team, the team to beat, and it'll probably make him better for it next year when he's at LCR. So that will be good, and he's pretty much made it to MotoGP now, so now we've got to see the results from him. Cal Crutchlow, bit disappointing, you got to say, because I thought he would see out his career with LCR Honda. Now it looks like he's looking for a ride elsewhere. I didn't think there was anything wrong with that relationship either, so this kind of came out of the blue a little bit. Maybe something behind the scenes, which I didn't really keep abreast of or anything, so who knows. But he's looking for a ride. Aprilia has been mentioned, so he could step in there in place of Andrea Iannone, who is still serving his doping ban. Serving his doping van. Serving his doping van. And no, that's not a business opportunity while he's serving that ban. He is pretty business savvy anyway. He's got other stuff that he does. He's all over Instagram. Don't like what he's done with the plastic surgery. Anyway. And with Yamaha, Franco Morbidelli confirmed for another couple of years at the Petronas SRT satellite team, which is good. You can expect them to make a call or, announcement to come soon for Valentino Rossi to partner him there for next year. But, all in good time. Rossi could still retire, which would be rather sad because, I don't get to see him at Phillip Island this year. Yeah, that would be sad. So hopefully he goes around another year and next year we can go down to Phillip Island and watch the Doctor race for, if it is the last time, then so be it. And then, IndyCar, had a doubleheader at Road America over the weekend. Scott Dixon ended up getting his hat-trick. So he won the first three races of the season. Had a good battle with Will Power. Ended up getting a better pit stop and finished ahead of his Aussie rival there. So I love it how you got a Kiwi and an Aussie at the top of IndyCar. It's so good. And then his teammate Felix Rosenqvist, who highly, highly regarded driver, highly rated. I'm a big fan. Shame that he didn't get into F1, but hey, F1's lost his IndyCar's gain and he got his maiden win, for Chip Ganassi Racing. So Ganassi having a good run at the moment in IndyCar, obviously with Dixon scoring a hat-trick of wins and Rosenqvist getting his first win there in race 4. Felix ended up beating McLaren's Patricio Award, who started on the pole position, and then Alexander Rossi finished third, and he's had a nightmarish start in his own words. I think that was the quote he used, but yeah, it's been a nightmare of a start to his season. He's a guy who has been in championship contention the last couple of years and has fallen short, unfortunately. And yeah, I'm a big fan, so I want to see him do well as well. But he finished on the podium in that 4th race. So hopefully you think that this would be the kickstart that he needs to his season. And a good result there for the Arrow McLaren SP team as well in their first year as McLaren. So yeah, wall-to-wall racing. I think eventually you might tire out from all this racing. But hey, we're riding high at the moment. It's, as I said before, it's the one thing that's kind of keeping us going. If you don't like racing and you're stuck here in Melbourne or Sydney in lockdown, then hope you got some other hobbies that are gonna keep you busy. But it's been good in that sense. But other than that, just the usual: stay safe, stay out of trouble. If you guys here doing it a bit tough, then don't be shy to speak up. Get out, reach out on Twitter or anything. Just in general, take care of yourselves, and we'll see you next week. Cheers.